Picture this. You're walking through the bustling streets of ancient Rome 2,000 years ago. The cobblestones echo with the footsteps of senators, merchants, and slaves alike. But there, in the shadow of marble columns, sits a man who has discovered something extraordinary. Something that would make him unbreakable in the face of the cruelest insults, the most vicious attacks on his character, the deepest disrespect imaginable. This man possesses a secret that emperors would kill for, a power that no army could conquer, no wealth could buy, and no enemy could steal. It's not magic. It's not divine intervention. It's something far more powerful and far more accessible than you might think. What if I told you that this same secret, this ancient wisdom, could transform how you handle every moment of disrespect in your life? What if you could become completely immune to the words that currently wound you? What if you could turn every insult into fuel for your growth, every attack into evidence of your strength? The man sitting in those shadows was Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful emperor in the known world, yet he spent his time not conquering lands, but conquering something far more elusive, himself. And today you're about to discover the 10 profound lessons that transformed not just him, but countless souls across millennia who dared to embrace this ancient philosophy we call Stoicism. But I must warn you, what you're about to learn will challenge everything you think you know about respect, reputation, and response. These aren't merely techniques or tricks, they are transformative principles that will rewire how you see the world itself. Some find this knowledge liberating beyond measure. Others find it too radical to accept. The question is, which will you be? Let's begin this journey into the depths of human resilience, where disrespect becomes powerless and you become unstoppable. Turn on social media and you'll find streams of insults flowing like polluted rivers. Enter any workplace and you'll witness subtle undermining disguised as professional discourse. Walk through daily life and you'll encounter rudeness masquerading as honesty, cruelty dressed up as humor. But here's what most people don't realize. Every moment you spend wounded by disrespect, every second you waste burning with indignation, every breath you use defending your ego against attack, these are moments of your precious life that you'll never recover. You're essentially allowing strangers, colleagues, even loved ones to steal your peace, your energy, your very essence. The ancient Stoics understood something profound. The person who can be hurt by words is already defeated before the battle begins. They recognize that true power lies not in controlling others' actions, but in mastering your own responses. They discovered that respect, real respect, comes not from demanding it from others, but from respecting yourself so deeply that external opinions become irrelevant. Today, we'll explore 10 transformative lessons that will fundamentally alter your relationship with disrespect. These aren't mere coping mechanisms, they're powerful reframes that will make you psychologically invulnerable while maintaining your humanity, your compassion, and your integrity. Are you ready to discover what it means to be truly unshakable? Let's dive deep into the wisdom that has guided warriors, emperors, and philosophers through the darkest moments of human experience. Lesson 1, the fortress of self-opinion. You have power over your mind, not outside events. O ent fortis. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius, imagine your mind as a vast, impenetrable fortress. Now picture every insult, every dismissive comment, every act of disrespect as arrows being shot at this fortress from the outside. Here's the remarkable truth that most people never grasp. These arrows cannot breach your walls unless you open the gates and invite them in. The first and most fundamental lesson of Stoic resilience is understanding that no one can hurt you without your permission. When someone disrespects you, they're not actually attacking you, they're revealing something about themselves. Your reaction, your emotional response, your wounded pride, these are choices you make, not inevitable consequences of their actions. Think about the last time someone truly disrespected you. Maybe they questioned your competence in front of others. Perhaps they dismissed your ideas without consideration. Or maybe they attacked your character with vicious words. In that moment, you likely felt a surge of emotions, anger, hurt, indignation, perhaps even rage. But here's what the Stoics want you to understand. Those emotions didn't come from their words. They came from your interpretation of their words. Consider this radical perspective. If someone hurls an insult at you in a language you don't understand, does it hurt you? Of course not. The sounds are meaningless to you. The injury comes not from the words themselves, but from the meaning you assign to them. This reveals something extraordinary. You are always in control of whether disrespect affects you, but this doesn't mean becoming callous or indifferent. The Stoic fortress isn't built from cold stone and bitter isolation. It's constructed from self-knowledge, rational thinking, and an unshakable understanding of your own worth. When you truly know who you are, your values, your strengths, your areas for growth, your fundamental character, external opinions become like weather reports from distant cities. Interesting perhaps, but irrelevant to your immediate experience. The Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced constant criticism, political attacks, and personal insults. People questioned his decisions, mocked his philosophical interests, and challenged his authority. Yet in his private writings, we see a man who remained centered, thoughtful, and purposeful. How? He had built an internal fortress so strong that external storms couldn't shake its foundations. This fortress is built through daily practice. Each morning, remind yourself, today I may encounter criticism, insults, or disrespect. These are opportunities to practice my strength. The person offering these gifts is struggling with their own limitations. Their words reflect their internal state, not my worth. When disrespect comes, pause before reacting. Ask yourself, is this person's opinion based on deep knowledge of who I am? Do they understand my motivations, my efforts, my journey? If not, why would I give their superficial judgment the power to disturb my peace? Remember, the goal isn't to become arrogant or dismissive of all feedback. Constructive criticism from people who know and care about you can be invaluable. The key is developing the wisdom to distinguish between feedback that serves your growth and attacks that serve only to wound. The fortress of self-opinion protects you from the latter while remaining open to the former. This practice transforms not just how you handle disrespect, but how you see yourself in the world. You begin to realize that your worth isn't determined by consensus. Your value isn't subject to popular vote, and your character isn't defined by the loudest critics. You become unshakable not through stubbornness, but through authentic self-knowledge. When you master this lesson, something remarkable happens. People's attempts to disrespect you begin to bounce off harmlessly, not because you've become hard or uncaring, but because you've become genuinely secure. And paradoxically, this security often earns you more respect than any defensive response ever could. The fortress of self-opinion isn't built overnight. It requires consistent practice, honest self-reflection, and the courage to value your own informed opinion of yourself over the uninformed opinions of others. But once built, it provides a sanctuary of peace that no external storm can disturb. Are you ready to begin construction? Lesson 2. The art of perspective shifting. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Epictetus. Imagine you're watching a movie, completely absorbed in the drama unfolding on screen. Suddenly, the camera pulls back, and you realize the intense scene you were watching was just a tiny portion of a much larger story. The characters you thought were heroes revealed themselves as complex individuals with both light and shadow. The villains show unexpected depth and history that explains their actions. Your entire understanding of the story transforms in an instant. This is the power of perspective shifting, one of the most liberating tools in the Stoic arsenal for handling disrespect. When someone treats you poorly, you're initially viewing the situation from ground level, caught in the immediate emotional impact. But what if you could instantly zoom out and see the larger picture? What if you could shift your perspective so dramatically that the disrespect transforms from a personal attack into valuable information about the human condition? Let's explore this through a practical example. Imagine you're in a meeting, presenting an idea you've worked on for weeks. Suddenly, a colleague interrupts you with a dismissive comment. "That's the most ridiculous suggestion I've heard all year. Did you even think this through?" The room falls silent. All eyes are on you. Your face burns with embarrassment and anger. From ground level, this feels like a devastating personal attack. Your first instinct might be to defend yourself aggressively or withdraw in hurt silence. But the Stoic perspective offers you several powerful reframes that can instantly transform this experience. Perspective 1, the suffering human. Shift your view to see your colleague not as an attacker, but as a fellow human being who is likely suffering in some way. Happy, content, secure people rarely feel the need to publicly humiliate others. This person's need to put you down probably stems from their own insecurities, frustrations, or pain. Perhaps they're under pressure from their boss. Maybe they're struggling with imposter syndrome and attacking others to feel competent. Possibly they learned this communication style from a toxic environment and genuinely don't realize how harmful it is. From this perspective, their disrespect becomes less about you and more about them. You might even feel a spark of compassion for someone so disconnected from constructive communication. This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it removes the personal sting and transforms your response from reactive to understanding. Perspective 2, the training opportunity. The ancient Stoics viewed every challenging situation as training sent by fate to strengthen their character. From this perspective, your colleague has just handed you an invaluable gift, the opportunity to practice grace under pressure. Under pressure, they've created the perfect laboratory for testing your emotional resilience, your communication skills, and your ability to maintain dignity in difficult circumstances. Olympic athletes don't complain when their training gets harder. They recognize that greater challenges build greater strength. Your colleague has just increased the difficulty setting on your character development. Will you rise to the challenge or let it defeat you? Perspective 3, the information gathering. Every act of disrespect provides valuable data about the person delivering it and the environment you're in. Your colleague has just revealed important information. They may lack emotional intelligence. They might not be skilled at collaborative communication. They could be operating from fear or insecurity, and they might not be someone whose opinion you should value highly. This information is incredibly useful for future interactions. Now you know to be more strategic about how and when you present ideas to this person. You understand that their communication style is more about them than about you. You can adjust your expectations accordingly. Perspective 4. The larger timeline. Zoom out further and view this moment from the perspective of your entire life. In 10 years, will this moment of disrespect matter at all? Will you even remember it? Most likely, this incident will fade into the background noise of life experience. But how you handle it, with grace or with reactivity, that could shape your character and reputation for years to come. From this long-term perspective, the specific words become almost irrelevant. What matters is who you choose to be in response to them. This moment is a small test that could have large implications for your personal development. Perspective 5, the cosmic view. The Stoics often recommended taking the ultimate zoomed-out perspective, viewing your situation from the cosmos itself. Marcus Aurelius regularly contemplated the vastness of space and time, recognizing that even the grandest human dramas are tiny blips in the universal story. From this cosmic perspective, one colleague's rudeness in one meeting on one planet, in one solar system, in one galaxy becomes almost comically insignificant. This isn't to minimize your experience, but to liberate you from taking it too seriously. The universe is vast and mysterious and beautiful, and you get to be conscious within it for a brief, precious time. Why waste that consciousness being upset about someone else's poor communication skills? The practice of rapid perspective shifting. With practice, you can learn to shift between these perspectives rapidly when faced with disrespect. The key is to train yourself to pause before reacting and ask, what other ways could I view this situation? What perspective would serve me better than feeling attacked? This isn't about denial or suppression. You're not pretending that disrespect didn't happen or that it doesn't affect you. You're choosing which lens to use when examining the experience. And that choice of lens can transform not just how you feel, but how you respond, and ultimately how you grow from the encounter. When you master perspective shifting, disrespect becomes less like a sudden storm that soaks you and more like interesting weather that you can observe from a warm, dry place. You maintain your agency, your peace, and your power to choose your response. Lesson 3, the power of detached observation. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. Marcus Aurelius, imagine you're a scientist studying human behavior in a fascinating laboratory called daily life. Your research focused today how humans respond to perceived threats to their ego and status. As you go about your day, you encounter a particularly interesting specimen, someone who feels compelled to diminish others to feel better about themselves. Instead of becoming emotionally involved in their behavior, you observe it with the cool, detached interest of a researcher documenting natural phenomena. This is the essence of detached observation, one of the most powerful tools for handling disrespect. When you can step outside the emotional drama and observe what's happening with scientific curiosity, several remarkable things occur. The situation loses its power to wound you. You gain valuable insights into human nature, and you respond from wisdom rather than wounded pride. But let's be clear about what detached observation is and isn't. It's not emotional numbness or cold indifference. It's not pretending you don't care or building walls around your heart. Instead, it's maintaining enough psychological distance to see clearly while remaining fully human and engaged. Think of it as becoming the calm eye in the center of an emotional storm. The observer self, deep within your psyche exists what we might call the observer self, the part of you that can watch your own thoughts, emotions, and reactions with quiet awareness. This observer isn't emotional or reactive. It simply notices what's happening with clarity and wisdom. When someone disrespects you, most of your psyche might flood with anger, hurt, or indignation. But the observer self remains calm, curious, and analytical. Developing this observer self is like building a watchtower in your mind. From this elevated position, you can see the entire landscape of the interaction, not just your own emotional response, but the broader context, the other person's likely motivations, and the various response options available to you. The art of internal narration. One powerful technique for engaging your observer self is internal narration. When faced with disrespect, begin silently narrating the situation as if you were a documentarian. Interesting. This person seems to feel threatened by my presence and is attempting to regain a sense of superiority through verbal aggression. Note how their body language suggests insecurity despite their aggressive words. Observe how this behavior likely stems from their own unresolved emotional issues rather than any actual inadequacy on my part. This internal narration serves multiple purposes. It activates your rational mind, creating psychological distance from the emotional impact. It helps you see patterns in human behavior that you might miss when you're emotionally reactive. And it often reveals the almost comedic predictability of ego-driven behavior. Studying the patterns through detached observation, you begin to notice fascinating patterns in how people handle their own insecurities and frustrations. You'll start to see that disrespect often follows predictable scripts. The person who constantly interrupts and dismisses others is usually desperate to feel important and heard. Their disrespectful behavior is actually a cry for recognition disguised as aggression. The individual who makes cutting jokes at others' expense is often dealing with their own shame and self-criticism. They externalize their internal critic, attacking others the way they attack themselves. The colleague who takes credit for others' work while diminishing their contributions is typically struggling with imposter syndrome and fears being exposed as inadequate. When you can see these patterns clearly, the disrespectful behavior becomes less personal and more predictable. You're no longer the target of a personal attack. You're simply the person who happened to be present when someone's internal struggles manifested as external aggression. The emotions as weather. From the perspective of detached observation, your emotional responses to disrespect become like weather patterns, natural phenomena to be observed rather than storms to be feared. Here comes the anger, rising like a summer thunderstorm. Interesting how quickly it peaks and how it creates this sensation of heat in my chest. And now, here's the hurt, following behind like rain after thunder. This observational stance doesn't eliminate emotions, but it prevents them from overwhelming your rational mind. You can experience the feelings while maintaining enough distance to choose your response thoughtfully rather than reactively. The laboratory of human nature. Perhaps most fascinating is how detached observation transforms daily life into a rich laboratory for understanding human nature. Every act of disrespect becomes data about how fear, insecurity, and pain manifest in human behavior. You begin to see the wounded child behind the aggressive adult, the frightened animal behind the dominant posturing. This understanding often generates genuine compassion. When you can see clearly that someone's disrespectful behavior stems from their own suffering, it becomes harder to take it personally and easier to respond with wisdom. Practical applications. In practice, detached observation might look like this. Your boss criticizes your work harshly in front of the entire team, using language that feels unnecessarily attacking. Instead of immediately defending yourself or withdrawing in hurt, you engage your observer self. Observe. My boss is choosing public humiliation over private feedback. This suggests they may be feeling pressure from their superiors and are displacing their stress downward. Note the body language, tight shoulders, rapid speech, avoiding eye contact. These are signs of anxiety, not confidence. Interesting how they're using shame as a management tool, which typically backfires but feels powerful in the moment. From this observational stance, you can respond strategically rather than emotionally. Perhaps you acknowledge their concerns calmly and suggest a private meeting to discuss improvements. Or maybe you ask clarifying questions that demonstrate your commitment to excellence while subtly shifting the conversation to more constructive ground. The long-term benefits. Over time, practicing detached observation fundamentally changes your relationship with conflict and criticism. You become genuinely curious about human behavior rather than defensive about personal attacks. You develop a calm confidence that comes from understanding the patterns underlying most interpersonal drama, and you cultivate wisdom that allows you to respond to disrespect in ways that often diffuse tension and sometimes even help the other person recognize their own counterproductive patterns. Most remarkably, when you consistently observe disrespectful behavior with calm curiosity rather than reactive emotion, you often inspire others to rise to a higher level of interaction. Your peaceful presence in the face of aggression can be transformative for everyone involved. Lesson 4. Transforming insults into opportunities. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Metals in their laboratory surrounded by base metals and mysterious compounds. Their greatest skill isn't in creating gold from nothing, but in transforming ordinary materials into something precious and valuable. Now imagine that you possess an even more powerful form of alchemy. The ability to transform every insult, every act of disrespect, every attempt to diminish you into pure gold for your character development. This is perhaps the most radical and transformative of all Stoic practices, viewing disrespect not as something to be avoided or defended against, but as raw material for building unshakable inner strength. When you master this art, you become like a psychological Aikido master, using the force of others' negativity to propel your own growth. The paradox of grateful reception. Here's a perspective that might initially seem absurd. Every person who disrespects you is offering you a gift. They're providing you with precisely the challenge you need to strengthen your character. Just as physical muscles grow stronger only when challenged with resistance, your emotional and psychological muscles develop only when tested by difficult circumstances. Consider this: if everyone always treated you with perfect respect and kindness, how would you ever develop resilience? How would you learn to maintain your center in challenging situations? How would you discover the depths of your own strength and compassion? The person who insults you is unwittingly serving as your personal trainer in the gymnasium of character development. This doesn't mean seeking out disrespect or enjoying it when it comes. Rather, it means recognizing that since challenging situations are inevitable in life, you might as well extract maximum value from them. Every insult becomes a question: how will I choose to grow from this experience? The mirror of self-discovery. One of the most powerful opportunities hidden within disrespect is the chance for radical self-discovery. Often what triggers us most deeply in others' behavior reflects something we need to examine within ourselves. The insults that sting the most frequently point to our own insecurities or areas where we lack self-acceptance. If someone calls you lazy and you barely react, it's probably because you're confident in your work ethic. But if that same comment sends you into a spiral of anger or self-doubt, it might be highlighting an area where you lack self-assurance. The disrespect becomes a spotlight illuminating aspects of yourself that need attention, healing, or development. This process of self-discovery through external triggers is like having a personal psychological consultant working for free. The person who disrespects you is essentially saying, here's where you might want to look more closely at your relationship with yourself. This information is invaluable for personal growth, the practice ground for virtues. The Stoics identified 4 cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Disrespectful situations provide perfect practice grounds for developing all of these. Wisdom is cultivated by learning to see beyond surface appearances to understand the deeper dynamics at play. When someone insults you, you practice wisdom by looking for the pain or fear driving their behavior, by understanding the broader context, and by choosing responses that serve everyone's highest good. Courage is developed not just in facing physical danger, but in maintaining your integrity and values when under attack. It takes courage to respond to disrespect with dignity, rather than defensiveness, to remain kind in the face of cruelty, and to stand for what you believe without needing to destroy those who oppose you. Justice is practiced by treating others fairly even when they don't treat you fairly. This means not escalating conflicts unnecessarily, not seeking 2.5 disproportionate revenge, and maintaining your commitment to ethical behavior regardless of how others behave toward you. Temperance is exercised through emotional self-regulation, not allowing your feelings to dictate your actions. When someone disrespects you, temperance means feeling the natural emotional response without being controlled by it, choosing your words carefully, and responding from your highest self rather than your wounded ego. The laboratory of communication skills, disrespectful situations also serves as intensive training grounds for advanced communication skills. When someone approaches you with aggression or dismissiveness, you have the opportunity to practice active listening, really hearing what's being said underneath the harsh words. Sometimes disrespect masks legitimate concerns that are being expressed poorly. De-escalation, learning to lower the temperature of heated interactions through calm presence, thoughtful responses, and strategic use of empathy. Boundary setting, how to maintain your standards and limits without becoming aggressive or defensive. Conflict resolution, developing skills in finding common ground, addressing underlying issues, and moving conversations toward productive outcomes. The strength training analogy. Think of disrespectful encounters as resistance training for your character. Just as a weightlifter gradually increases the difficulty of their workouts to build strength, life gradually presents you with more challenging interpersonal situations to develop your emotional and psychological resilience. The person who gives you a mildly dismissive comment is like a lightweight that helps you build basic strength. The colleague who consistently undermines you is like a heavier weight that builds more substantial muscle. The family member who attacks your deepest insecurities is like advanced strength training that develops elite-level resilience. From this perspective, you can approach each disrespectful encounter with something approaching athletic enthusiasm. This is excellent training. Let me see how well I can handle this challenge. What new level of strength can I develop through this experience? Creating your growth portfolio, consider keeping a mental or actual portfolio of how each disrespectful encounter contributed to your development. After each challenging interaction, ask yourself, what did I learn about myself from this experience? How did I grow stronger or more skilled? What would I do differently next time? How can I use this experience to help others facing similar challenges? Over time, you'll build a rich collection of experiences that transform potential wounds into actual wisdom. You'll begin to see patterns in your growth and develop confidence in your ability to handle whatever challenges come your way. The ripple effect, perhaps most remarkably, when you consistently transform disrespect into opportunities for growth, you often inspire transformation in others. Your calm, centered response to their aggression sometimes helps them recognize their own patterns. Your refusal to engage in toxic behavior sometimes creates space for more constructive interaction. You become a living example of how to handle conflict with grace, and this example can be profoundly healing for people who have never seen it modeled before. In this way, your personal alchemy of transforming disrespect into growth can contribute to positive change in your entire environment. Lesson 5. The illusion of control. Some things are within our power while others are not. Epictetus. Imagine you're standing in the middle of a vast ocean during a storm. The waves crash around you, the wind howls and rain pelts your face. Now picture trying to stop the storm through sheer force of will, commanding the waves to be still, demanding the wind to stop blowing, insisting that the rain cease falling. This would be obviously futile, even absurd. Yet this is exactly what most people try to do when faced with disrespect. They attempt to control other people's words, thoughts, and actions. The illusion of control is perhaps the most persistent and painful delusion that keeps us trapped in cycles of frustration and anger. We exhaust ourselves trying to manage things that were never ours to manage, while neglecting the one thing we can actually control, our own responses. The Great Divide, what's yours and what isn't. Epictetus, who understood this principle better than perhaps anyone in history, drew a clear and uncompromising line between what belongs to us and what doesn't. Having spent years as a slave, he knew intimately what it meant to have no control over external circumstances. Yet he discovered that even in the most constrained situations, there remained an inner sanctuary of choice that no external force could touch. Here's the radical truth: other people's respect or disrespect toward you is completely outside your control. Their words, their attitudes, their judgments, their behavior, none of this belongs to you. Trying to control these things is like trying to control the weather with your thoughts. It simply cannot be done, and attempting it will only exhaust and frustrate you. But here's what is absolutely, unquestionably within your control: how you interpret their behavior, how you respond to it, what you choose to learn from it, and who you decide to be in the face of it. This realm of choice is your true domain of power, and it's infinitely more valuable than any external control you might imagine having. The energy drain of false control. Consider how much mental and emotional energy you spend trying to manage other people's opinions of you. You craft your words carefully to avoid criticism. You modify your behavior to gain approval. You replay conversations, wondering if you said something wrong. You strategize about how to make someone respect you or like you. You worry about what people are thinking or saying about you when you're not around. All of this energy expenditure is based on the illusion that you can control others' thoughts and feelings about you. But the truth is, people's opinions are formed by their own experiences, biases, insecurities, and worldviews. Someone might disrespect you simply because you remind them of the person who hurt them years ago. Another might dismiss your ideas because they threaten their sense of expertise. A third might be rude to you because they're having personal problems that have nothing to do with you. When you truly understand that their responses are about them, not you, you can stop wasting energy trying to manage their internal experience and redirect that energy toward managing your own. The freedom of letting go. There's profound liberation in releasing the burden of trying to control others' respect. Imagine the relief of knowing that you don't have to manage anyone's opinion of you. You don't have to craft the perfect response to every criticism. You don't have to defend yourself against every attack. You don't have to convince anyone of your worth. This doesn't mean becoming passive or accepting mistreatment. It means recognizing that your power lies in your response, not in controlling the stimulus. You can set boundaries without trying to control whether others respect those boundaries. You can communicate your values without needing others to adopt them. You can maintain your standards without requiring others to meet them. The paradox of attraction. Here's something fascinating that happens when you stop trying to control others' respect. You often end up earning more genuine respect than you ever did through effort. People are naturally drawn to individuals who seem comfortable in their own skin, who don't need constant validation, who can remain centered regardless of external pressures. When you stop being desperate for respect, you become respectable. When you stop trying to control others' opinions, you become the kind of person whose opinion others value. When you stop defending your worth, you demonstrate that you know your worth doesn't need defending. Practical applications of the control principle. In practice, applying this principle might look like this. Scenario: a colleague publicly criticizes your project, calling it amateurish and poorly thought out. Illusion of control response. You spend hours crafting the perfect comeback, strategizing how to make them look bad in return, worrying about what others will think, and trying to convince everyone that your colleague is wrong. Accepting reality response. You recognize that your colleague's opinion is their business, not yours. You evaluate whether their criticism contains any useful feedback while ignoring the disrespectful delivery. You focus on improving your work if needed, communicating professionally if necessary, and maintaining your emotional equilibrium regardless of their attitude. The test of true understanding. You'll know you've truly internalized this lesson when someone's disrespect no longer creates an immediate urge to change their mind about you. Instead of thinking, "How can I make them respect me?" you'll find yourself thinking, "How can I respond in a way that honors my values?" Instead of being driven by their opinion, you'll be guided by your principles. The long game. Understanding the illusion of control also helps you play the long game of character development. When you stop trying to manage others' immediate reactions, you can focus on building the kind of character that naturally commands respect over time. You can concentrate on becoming competent rather than appearing competent, on developing integrity rather than managing your image, on cultivating wisdom rather than winning arguments. This shift from external management to internal development is perhaps the most important transition you can make in your personal growth journey. It's the difference between being a puppet dancing to others' opinions and being the master of your own destiny. The ultimate freedom. Final realization of this lesson is that when you stop trying to control others' respect, you discover that you never needed it in the first place. You have everything you need within yourself to live a meaningful, dignified, and fulfilling life. Others' opinions become interesting data rather than determining factors. Their disrespect becomes their problem, not yours. This is the ultimate freedom, the liberation from needing others to validate your worth, approve of your choices, or respect your existence. When you achieve this freedom, disrespect loses all its power over you, not because you don't care about how you're treated, but because you know that your peace, your purpose, and your path are not dependent on anyone else's permission or approval. Lesson 6. The wisdom of negative visualization. What is grief but an opinion? Epictetus. Imagine a master chess player sitting across from their opponent, but instead of only planning their next move, they're simultaneously visualizing how the game might unfold. If their strategies fail, if they face unexpected attacks, this mental preparation doesn't make them pessimistic or fearful, it makes them unshakable. When setbacks occur, they're ready. When attacks come, they're prepared. When the unexpected happens, they adapt fluidly. This is the essence of negative visualization, one of the most counterintuitive yet powerful Stoic practices for handling disrespect. By mentally rehearsing challenging scenarios before they occur, you build psychological immunity to their emotional impact. You become like a vaccine, protected immune system, ready to handle the viruses of disrespect when they inevitably appear. The paradox of preparation. Most people approach life hoping for the best while being unprepared for anything less. They imagine that everyone will treat them with respect, that their work will be appreciated, that their contributions will be recognized. When reality fails to match these expectations, they're blindsided by disappointment, anger, and hurt. The Stoic approach is radically different. Hope for the best while being prepared for everything else. This doesn't mean becoming cynical or pessimistic. Instead, it means building emotional resilience by acknowledging that disrespect is a normal part of human interaction and preparing yourself to handle it with grace. The morning preparation ritual. Marcus Aurelius had a powerful morning practice that exemplifies negative visualization. He would remind himself that during the day he would likely encounter people who were meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But rather than dreading these encounters, he prepared for them mentally and emotionally. You can develop a similar practice. Each morning before diving into your day, spend a few minutes considering, today I might encounter criticism, dismissiveness, rudeness, or outright disrespect. How do I want to respond when this happens? What kind of person do I want to be in those moments? What would my best self do? This mental rehearsal serves multiple purposes. It removes the element of surprise from difficult interactions. It allows you to plan thoughtful responses in advance when you're calm and centered, rather than having to improvise when you're emotionally triggered. And it helps you maintain perspective by reminding you that challenging interactions are normal, temporary, and manageable. Scenario-based mental training. Take negative visualization a step further by imagining specific scenarios you might face and mentally rehearsing your responses. Scenario 1. Your boss criticizes your work in front of the entire team, using harsh language and questioning your competence. Mental rehearsal. If this happens, I will breathe deeply and listen for any valid feedback within the harsh delivery. I will respond professionally. I appreciate your feedback. Let me schedule a time to discuss how I can improve this work. I will not defend myself in the moment, but will address the substance privately later. Scenario 2. A family member makes cutting comments about your life choices during a gathering, trying to embarrass you in front of others. Mental rehearsal. If this happens, I will remember that their comments reflect their own discomfort, not the truth about my choices. I will respond calmly. I understand you have concerns. I'd be happy to discuss this privately later. I will not escalate the conflict or defend myself publicly. Scenario 3. A colleague takes credit for your work and dismisses your contributions when you try to address it. Mental rehearsal. If this happens, I will document the facts clearly and address it through appropriate channels. I will not let their behavior alter my commitment to doing excellent work. I will focus on building relationships with people who operate with integrity. The emotional inoculation effect. Through regular negative visualization, you create what psychologists call emotional inoculation. Just as exposure to small amounts of a virus can build immunity to larger exposures, mentally experiencing challenging scenarios builds resilience to actually experiencing them. When someone does disrespect you, instead of being caught off guard and reacting emotionally, you'll often find yourself thinking, this is like the scenario I visualized. I know how to handle this. The situation becomes familiar rather than threatening, manageable rather than overwhelming. Cultivating gratitude through contrast. Negative visualization also serves a secondary purpose. It makes you deeply grateful for the respect and kindness you do receive. When you regularly contemplate how people might treat you poorly, you develop genuine appreciation for those who treat you well. This practice helps you avoid taking positive interactions for granted. Instead of expecting respect as your due and being upset when you don't receive it, you begin seeing respect as a gift to be appreciated when it's offered and not desperately needed when it's absent. The difference between expectation and preparation. It's crucial to understand the distinction between expecting disrespect and preparing for it. Expectation creates cynicism and damages relationships. If you expect everyone to treat you poorly, you'll approach interactions defensively and may create the very problems you're trying to avoid. Preparation, on the other hand, creates resilience without damaging relationships. You remain open, kind, and hopeful in your interactions while being psychologically ready to handle challenges gracefully if they arise. Advanced negative visualization practices. As you become more comfortable with basic negative visualization, you can explore more advanced practices. Reputational visualization. Imagine how you would handle having your reputation attacked publicly. What if people spread false information about you? What if your mistakes were magnified and your successes minimized? How would you maintain your inner peace and continue living according to your values? Professional visualization. Picture losing the respect of colleagues, being passed over for promotions, or having your ideas consistently dismissed. How would you continue to contribute meaningfully and maintain your professional integrity? Social visualization. Imagine being excluded from social groups, having friends turn against you, or being misunderstood by people you care about. How would you continue to be the kind of person you want to be? The liberation of preparedness. When you've mentally prepared for various forms of disrespect, something remarkable happens. You become fearless in your authenticity. You can speak your truth, make difficult decisions, and stand up for your values without being paralyzed by fear of how others might react. You know that if people respond negatively, you're prepared to handle it with grace. If they withdraw their respect, you've already considered how you'll maintain your self-respect. If they attack your character, you've rehearsed how to remain centered in your knowledge of who you really are. This preparedness creates profound freedom. You're no longer held hostage by the possibility of others' disapproval. You can live boldly, love deeply, and lead authentically, knowing that whatever challenges arise, you have the tools to meet them with dignity and strength. Present moment gift, perhaps most beautifully, negative visualization enhances your appreciation of present moments when you're treated with kindness and respect. Having contemplated how much worse interactions could be, you develop deep gratitude for how good they often are. This gratitude enriches your relationships and helps you contribute to the positive atmosphere you're grateful to experience. Through the wisdom of negative visualization, you transform from someone who hopes for respect and is devastated when it doesn't come, to someone who appreciates respect when it's offered and remains unshaken when it's absent. This transformation is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself and all those whose lives you touch. Lesson 7. The inner scorecard versus the outer scorecard. How much trouble he avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does. Marcus Aurelius. Picture two business people, both highly successful by external measures. The first constantly checks stock prices, reads every review, monitors social media mentions, and measures success by quarterly earnings and public recognition. The second focuses primarily on whether their decisions align with their values, whether they're growing as a person, and whether their work contributes meaningfully to the world. Both might achieve external success, but only one has built a foundation that can't be shaken by market crashes, bad reviews, or public criticism. This illustrates one of the most transformative distinctions in Stoic philosophy, the difference between living by an inner scorecard versus an outer scorecard. Your relationship with disrespect will fundamentally change depending on which scorecard you use to measure your worth and success. Understanding the two scorecards, the outer scorecard measures your value based on external metrics, what others think of you, how much approval you receive, whether people respect your opinions, how you're perceived socially or professionally, what your reputation looks like, and how others rate your performance or character. The inner scorecard measures your value based on internal metrics, whether you're living according to your deepest values, how well you're developing as a human being, whether you're acting with integrity even when no one is watching, how effectively you're pursuing what matters most to you, pursuing what want to be. They make decisions based on how others will react, modify their behavior to gain approval, and measure their success by external recognition. This creates a fundamental vulnerability. When others withdraw their approval or express disrespect, it feels like a direct attack on their worth as a person. The fragility of external validation. Living by the outer scorecard is like building your house on shifting sand. External opinions are notoriously unreliable, fickle, and often based on incomplete information. The same people who praise you today might criticize you tomorrow. The respect you earn in one context might evaporate when circumstances change. The approval you receive from one group might come with disapproval from another. Consider how exhausting it is to constantly monitor and manage others' opinions of you. You have to anticipate their reactions, modify your behavior to please them, defend yourself when they disapprove, and strategize about how to regain their favor when you lose it. This is like trying to navigate by a compass that spins wildly. You'll never reach your true destination because your reference point is constantly shifting. When you know what you value, what you stand for, and who you want to be, these standards remain constant regardless of how others treat you. Someone can disrespect you, criticize you, or completely misunderstand you, but they cannot change your core values or force you to abandon your integrity. This creates remarkable resilience. When someone treats you poorly, you can ask yourself, did I respond according to my values? Did I maintain my integrity? Did I act with the kind of character I want to develop? If the answers are yes, then their disrespect becomes irrelevant to your sense of self-worth. Practical applications of inner scorecard living. Let's explore how this works in practice. Situation. You present a project at work and a colleague publicly dismisses it as obviously flawed without providing constructive feedback. Outer scorecard response. You immediately worry about what everyone thinks. You feel embarrassed and question the quality of your work. You spend energy trying to defend the project and restore your reputation. Your self-confidence takes a hit because someone important doesn't respect your work. You maintain confidence in your abilities while remaining open to improvement. Your self-worth remains stable because it's based on your internal standards, not their opinion. The questions that matter. When you live by the inner scorecard, disrespectful encounters prompt different questions. Instead of, what do they think of me? You ask, what do I think of my response? Instead of, how can I make them respect me? You ask, how can I respect myself in this situation? Instead of, did I win their approval? You ask, did I win their approval? You ask, did I win their approval? You ask, did I maintain my integrity? Instead of, how do I look to others? You ask, who am I becoming through this experience? These questions shift your focus from trying to control others' perceptions to taking responsibility for your own character development. They transform disrespectful encounters from threats to your worth into opportunities to clarify and strengthen your values. The paradox of authentic respect. Here's something remarkable that often happens when you shift to inner scorecard living. You often end up earning more genuine respect from others. People are naturally drawn to individuals who seem self-possessed, who don't desperately need approval, and who remain consistent regardless of social pressures. When you stop being driven by others' opinions, you become more authentic. When you stop trying to please everyone, you become more interesting. When you stop defending your worth, you demonstrate that your worth doesn't need defending. Paradoxically, caring less about others' respect often leads to receiving more of it. Building your inner scorecard. Developing a robust inner scorecard requires clarity about your deepest values and standards. Ask yourself, what kind of person do I want to be, regardless of how others treat me? What values are so important to me that I'd rather face disrespect than compromise them? How do I define success in terms of character growth rather than external achievement? What standards can I apply to my behavior that don't depend on others' approval? Write these down and revisit them regularly. When faced with disrespect, refer to these internal standards rather than looking for external validation. The liberation of self-approval. Perhaps the most liberating aspect of inner scorecard living is discovering that you don't need anyone else's permission to feel good about yourself. You can approve of your own choices, respect your own journey, and validate your own growth. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant or dismissive of feedback, but it means developing a stable foundation of self-worth that external storms can't shake. Dealing with inner scorecard challenges, living by the inner scorecard isn't always easy. Sometimes you'll face situations where doing the right thing according to your values leads to social disapproval or professional consequences. In these moments, the inner scorecard becomes especially important because it reminds you that integrity is more valuable than approval. You might also discover that some of your values were actually just internalized social expectations. The process of developing an authentic inner scorecard involves distinguishing between what you truly believe and what you think you should believe based on others' expectations. The long-term perspective. When you live by the inner scorecard, you're playing a much longer game than those focused on immediate external validation. You're building character that will serve you for decades, developing integrity that can't be taken away, and creating a foundation of self-respect that no amount of external disrespect can erode. Years from now, the opinions of people who disrespected you will likely be forgotten, but the character you built in response to their treatment will remain with you forever. The inner scorecard ensures that every encounter, respectful or disrespectful, contributes to your long-term growth and development. Lesson 8. The practice of voluntary discomfort. Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared? Is this the condition that I fear? Seneca. Imagine a warrior who has never faced battle being sought out increasingly challenging opponents. When real danger comes, which warrior do you think will remain calm, focused, and effective? The answer is obvious, yet most people approach emotional and social challenges like the unprepared warrior, hoping they'll never face difficulty and being devastated when it inevitably arrives. The Stoic practice of voluntary discomfort is like deliberate training for life's inevitable hardships. By choosing to experience small, manageable challenges regularly, you build the resilience and strength needed to handle major difficulties with grace. When it comes to disrespect, This practice can make you virtually immune to the emotional wounds that devastate others. Voluntary discomfort. Voluntary discomfort involves deliberately placing yourself in situations that are uncomfortable, challenging, or potentially embarrassing, not because you enjoy suffering, but because you want to strengthen your character and reduce your dependence on external comforts and validation. This isn't masochism or self-punishment. It's strategic preparation. Just as athletes train in conditions that are more demanding than actual competition, you can train yourself to handle disrespect by voluntarily experiencing smaller versions of rejection, criticism, and social disapproval. Modern life conspires to keep us comfortable, insulated from difficulty and protected from anything that might challenge our ego or self-image. The self-image: we surround ourselves with people who agree with us, consume media that confirms our beliefs, and avoid situations where we might face criticism or rejection. While this might feel pleasant in the short term, it leaves us psychologically fragile. When disrespect inevitably comes, we're like hothouse plants suddenly exposed to harsh weather. We wilt at the first sign of difficulty because we've never developed resilience. Voluntary discomfort is the antidote to this fragility. By regularly exposing yourself to controlled challenges, you develop what psychologists call stress inoculation, the ability to remain calm and effective under pressure because you've practiced handling pressure in safe environments. Practical exercises for building disrespect resilience. Here are specific voluntary discomfort practices that can strengthen your ability to handle disrespect. The rejection challenge. Once a week, deliberately put yourself in a situation where you might be rejected or told no. Ask for a discount at a store. Request a favor from an acquaintance. Propose an idea that might be dismissed. Pubestas as dismissed. The goal isn't to get what you want, it's to practice experiencing rejection without being devastated by it. The opinion sharing exercise. Express an opinion you genuinely hold, but that you know might be unpopular in your current social group. This isn't about being contrarian or argumentative, but about practicing standing for your beliefs even when others might disagree or disapprove. The mistake acknowledgement practice. When you make an error, instead of hiding it or making excuses, practice acknowledging it openly and directly. This builds comfort with being imperfect in others' eyes and reduces the ego protection that makes criticism so painful. The help requesting exercise. Ask for help or admit ignorance in areas where you usually pretend to be competent. This practice reduces the exhausting effort of maintaining a perfect image and builds comfort with being vulnerable. The underdressing experiment. Occasionally dress more casually than the situation calls for within reasonable bounds. Experience how it feels when your appearance doesn't meet others' expectations, and practice maintaining your self-worth regardless of their reactions. The public speaking challenge. Volunteer to speak in public, join a debate club, or share your ideas in group settings where you might face questions or criticism. This builds resilience to having your ideas challenged publicly. Advanced practices for emotional resilience. As you become more comfortable with basic voluntary discomfort, you can try more advanced practices. The criticism-seeking exercise. Ask trusted friends or mentors to give you honest feedback about areas where you could improve. Practice receiving criticism without becoming defensive or wounded. The social experiment. Intentionally violate minor social conventions, wear mismatched clothes, eat with the wrong utensil, sing quietly in public, to practice being comfortable when others judge your behavior. The status reduction practice. Occasionally put yourself in situations where you have lower status than usual. Be the newest person in a group, the lowest ranked in a hierarchy. Practice maintaining your self-respect regardless of your position. The fasting from validation exercise. Go periods without seeking approval, likes, compliments, or external validation. When you're not getting the positive feedback you're used to receiving, the psychological benefits. Regular practice of voluntary discomfort creates several powerful psychological changes. Reduced social anxiety. When you've deliberately practiced being uncomfortable in social situations, natural social challenges, from anxious to disappointment or changes, from enticed tolerance of approval to feel okay about your trash tolerance, you become the fresh tolerances. When you're not afraid of mentreases, you can be more genic admonishes the confidence. When you're not afraid of uninterrogescan for practice, you can be more genic and fighted in some for pressures and then Christus bonniches go into the strashes, because we've practiced back it about it in its confidence one increase that improve. When you know you can handle rejection, criticism, and social disapproval, you stop being afraid of these experiences. This freedom from fear allows you to take appropriate risks, speak authentically, and pursue your goals without being paralyzed by what others might think. This isn't the false confidence that comes from never being challenged, but the deep confidence that comes from knowing you can handle challenges when they arise. Applying the practice to disrespect. When you've regularly practiced voluntary discomfort, actual disrespect becomes much more manageable. You've already experienced versions of what's happening: criticism, rejection, disapproval in controlled environments. The disrespectful person can't shock you or devastate you because you've essentially vaccinated yourself against their emotional impact. You might even find yourself thinking, "This is interesting. They are trying to hurt me by withdrawing their approval. But I've practiced being comfortable without approval. Their strategy isn't working because I've already conquered this fear." Building a practice routine. Start small and build gradually. You might begin with one small voluntary discomfort exercise per week. Then increase frequency as you become more comfortable. The key is consistency rather than intensity. Regular small challenges are more effective than occasional dramatic ones. Keep a journal of your experiences, noting how you felt before, during, and after each exercise. Track your growing resilience and celebrate your progress in becoming more emotionally anti-fragile. The ultimate freedom. The goal of voluntary discomfort isn't to become callous or indifferent to how others treat you. It's to become free from the fear of their disapproval. When you're no longer controlled by the possibility of disrespect, you can engage with others more openly, take more meaningful risks, and live more authentically. You transform from someone who typos through life, trying to avoid criticism, to someone who walks confidently, knowing that whatever challenges arise, you have the strength and resilience to handle them with grace. This transformation doesn't happen overnight, but with consistent practice it becomes one of the most valuable investments you can make in your personal development. Lesson 9. The Art of Philosophical Reframing. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. Picture a master artist standing before a canvas covered with what appears to be ugly, chaotic brushstrokes. To the untrained eye, it looks like a ruined painting, a failure, something to be discarded. But the artist sees something entirely different. They see the potential for a masterpiece, the foundation for something beautiful, the raw material that will become their greatest work. With skilled reframing and perspective, they transform apparent disaster into deliberate design. This is the essence of philosophical reframing, the profound ability to take any experience, no matter how painful or challenging, and find within it the seeds of wisdom, growth, and strength. When someone disrespects you, you have a choice. You can see it as an attack on your worth, or you can see it as raw material for building unshakable character. The frame determines the picture. The way you interpret any event itself on your life far more than the event itself. Two people can experience identical disrespectful treatment and have completely different psychological responses based solely on how they frame the experience. One might be devastated and angry for days. The other might feel genuinely grateful for the learning opportunity. The difference isn't in their external circumstances or even their natural temperaments. The difference is in the interpretive frameworks they use to make sense of their experiences. These frameworks are learned, which means they can be changed, upgraded, and optimized for resilience and growth. Classical Stoic reframes. The ancient Stoics developed several powerful reframing techniques that can transform your relationship with disrespect. The teacher frame. Every person who treats you poorly is essentially serving as a teacher, showing you something important about human nature, about your own areas for growth, or about how not to behave. From this perspective, the most difficult people become your most valuable instructors. They're providing education you couldn't get any other way. When someone disrespects you, you might think, this person is teaching me about patience, about maintaining dignity under pressure, about the importance of choosing my responses carefully. I'm receiving a masterclass in emotional resilience, and I should be grateful for such intensive training. The mirror frame. Often, what bothers us most about others' behavior reflects something within ourselves that needs attention. The person who triggers your anger might be showing you your own capacity for hostility, The person who dismisses you might be highlighting your own tendencies to dismiss others. This frame transforms disrespect into self-discovery. What is this person's behavior teaching me about myself? How might I be treating others in similar ways without realizing it? What aspects of my own character need development? The strength training frame. Every challenging interaction is like resistance training for your character. Just as physical muscles grow stronger only when challenged with weights, your emotional and psychological muscles develop only when tested by difficult circumstances. From this perspective, you might think, this person is essentially offering me a free session with a personal trainer for my character. They're helping me build patience, resilience, compassion, and wisdom. I should approach this challenge with the same mindset an athlete brings to training. The cosmic perspective frame. When you zoom out and view the interaction from the perspective of the universe, it becomes almost comically small and temporary. This doesn't minimize your experience, but it provides helpful context about the relative importance of the event. You might reflect, in the vast span of cosmic time, this moment of disrespect is infinitesimally brief. Entire civilizations will rise and fall, and this interaction will be completely forgotten. What matters is not their words, but how I choose to respond in this tiny slice of eternity. Modern psychological reframes. Contemporary psychology offers additional reframing tools that complement Stoic wisdom, the growth mindset frame. Instead of seeing disrespect as evidence that you're inadequate, see it as information about where you can improve. People with growth mindsets view challenges as opportunities to develop new capabilities. The attribution frame. Most disrespectful behavior says more about the other person's internal state than about you. They might be stressed, insecure, afraid, or dealing with personal problems. Reframing their behavior as information about them rather than judgment about you reduces its emotional impact. The narrative frame. You are the author of your life story. Every experience, including disrespectful treatment, becomes part of your narrative. You get to decide whether this chapter is about victimhood and resentment or about resilience and growth. Advanced reframing techniques. As you become more skilled at philosophical reframing, you can develop increasingly sophisticated perspectives. The systems thinking frame. View disrespectful interactions as symptoms of larger systems and patterns. The rude colleague might be reflecting organizational dysfunction. The dismissive family member might be perpetuating generational patterns. This frame helps you see beyond personal attacks to understand broader dynamics. The evolutionary frame. Consider how challenges and conflicts have driven human development throughout history. Your current challenge might be part of your own evolutionary development. Service frame. Reframe difficult interactions as opportunities to serve others through your response. Your graceful handling of disrespect might model better behavior for observers, help the other person recognize their patterns, or contribute to a more positive environment overall. Process of reframing. Philosophical reframing is a skill that improves with practice. Here's a step-by-step process for applying it. 1. Pause when you feel triggered by disrespectful treatment. Take a moment before reacting. This pause creates space for reframing. 2. Acknowledge. Recognize your initial emotional response without judging it. I notice I'm feeling angry and hurt. 3. Question. Ask yourself, what other ways could I interpret this situation? What might this experience be here to teach me? 4. Explore. Consider multiple reframes. Don't settle for the first alternative perspective you find. 5. Choose. Select the reframe that feels both truthful and empowering. It should acknowledge reality while opening possibilities for growth. Apply. Use your chosen reframe to guide your response and your ongoing relationship with the experience. The transformation of meaning. When you become skilled at philosophical reframing, something remarkable happens. Experiences that once seemed purely negative begin to reveal hidden gifts. Criticism becomes feedback. Rejection becomes redirection. Disrespect becomes education. Conflict becomes opportunity. This doesn't mean pretending that difficult experiences are pleasant or that all treatment is acceptable. It means finding the growth potential in every situation and using that potential to fuel your development rather than your resentment. The ripple effects. People who consistently practice philosophical reframing often inspire transformation in others. When you respond to disrespect with wisdom and grace, You demonstrate possibilities that others might not have considered. Your reframing can help them reframe their own challenges and approach difficulties with greater resilience, building the habit. Like any skill, philosophical reframing becomes more natural with practice. Start by applying it to minor irritations and gradually work up to more significant challenges. Keep a journal of your reframing experiments, noting which perspectives feel most helpful and which lead to the most positive outcomes. Over time, you'll develop an automatic tendency to look for the growth opportunity in every challenge, the lesson in every difficulty, and the strength-building potential in every moment of disrespect. This habit will transform not just how you handle criticism, but how you approach all of life's inevitable challenges. The ultimate reframe. Perhaps the most powerful reframe of all is recognizing that your ability to reframe any experience is itself a superpower. No matter what happens to you, no matter how others treat you, you always retain the capacity to find meaning, extract wisdom, and choose growth. This realization makes you psychologically invincible, not because nothing can hurt you, but because everything can teach you. Lesson 10. Cultivating unshakable inner peace. Tranquility comes when you stop caring what they do or say and only care about what you do and say. Epictetus, imagine a mountain lake so deep and still that it perfectly reflects the sky above. Storms may rage across its surface, winds may create temporary ripples, but beneath the surface disturbance lies a profound depth of calm that remains untouched by external turbulence. This is the quality of inner peace that the Stoics sought to cultivate, not the absence of challenge, but the presence of unshakable tranquility beneath life's inevitable storms. This final lesson encompasses and transcends all others because it represents the ultimate goal of Stoic practice, developing a state of inner equilibrium so robust that no external event, no matter how disrespectful or challenging, can disturb your fundamental peace. This isn't indifference or emotional numbing. It's the deepest form of emotional intelligence and spiritual strength. Understanding true inner peace. Most people confuse inner peace with external calm. They think peace means having everyone respect them, avoiding conflict, or controlling their environment to minimize stress. But this false peace is actually a form of fragility. It depends entirely on circumstances beyond your control and crumbles the moment those circumstances change. True inner peace is radically different. It's a quality of consciousness that remains stable regardless of external conditions. It's the peace of knowing who you are and what you stand for, regardless of others' opinions. It's the tranquility that comes from accepting reality as it is while maintaining your power to respond from wisdom rather than reactivity. This peace doesn't mean you become passive or disconnected. Instead, you become more effective because you're not wasting energy on emotional turbulence. You become more compassionate because you're not defended against life. You become more authentic because you're not performing for others' approval. The components of unshakable peace. Inner peace has several interconnected elements that work together to create psychological invulnerability, self-knowledge. You know your values, strengths, weaknesses, and purposes so clearly that others' opinions become interesting information rather than determining factors. When someone disrespects you, it doesn't shake you because your sense of self isn't dependent on their validation. Acceptance. You've made peace with the fundamental nature of reality, that life includes difficulty, that people are imperfect, that you can't control others' behavior. This acceptance eliminates the constant stress of fighting against what is. Purpose. You're connected to something larger than your ego, whether that's service to others, creative expression, spiritual growth, or contributing to human flourishing. This larger purpose makes personal slights seem relatively insignificant. Emotional regulation. You've developed the ability to feel emotions fully without being controlled by them. You can experience anger without acting destructively, feel hurt without becoming bitter, or encounter fear without being paralyzed. Present moment awareness. You're grounded in the reality of this moment rather than lost in stories about the past or future. This present moment focus prevents you from amplifying current difficulties with historical resentments or future anxieties. The daily practice of peace cultivation. Inner peace isn't a destination you reach once, it's a quality you cultivate daily through consistent practice. Here are the essential elements of this cultivation. Morning centering. Begin each day by reconnecting with your deeper purpose and values. Remind yourself that your peace comes from within, not from others' treatment of you. Set an intention to respond to all interactions from your highest self. End each day by reviewing your responses to challenges. Did you maintain your center when faced with difficulty? What triggered you, and how can you strengthen those areas? Celebrate moments when you remain peaceful under pressure. Mindfulness practice. Develop the ability to observe your thoughts and emotions without being swept away by them. When someone disrespects you, notice your automatic reactions without immediately acting on them. This space between stimulus and response is where your power lies. Gratitude cultivation. Regularly acknowledge what you appreciate in your life. Gratitude naturally generates peace because it shifts your focus from what's wrong to what's working. Even in difficult situations, you can find something to appreciate. Values clarification. Regularly examine and refine your understanding of what matters most to you. When your values are clear, decision-making becomes easier and external pressure becomes less compelling. The paradox of detached engagement. One of the most sophisticated aspects of inner peace is learning to be simultaneously detached and engaged. You care deeply about your work, relationships, and contributions to the world, but you're not attached to specific outcomes or others' approval of your efforts. This means you can pursue excellence without being devastated by criticism. You can love people without being controlled by their moods. You can stand for your principles without needing everyone to agree with them. You engage fully with life while maintaining emotional freedom. Dealing with peace disruptors. Certain patterns of thinking and behaving can disrupt inner peace. Learning to recognize and address these patterns is crucial. Victim mentality. When you focus on how others have wronged you, you give away your power and disturb your peace. Transform victim stories into growth stories by focusing on what you learned and how you became stronger. Perfectionism. Demanding that you, others, or circumstances be perfect sets you up for constant disappointment. Practice accepting imperfection as a natural part of existence. Comparison. Measuring your worth against others' achievements or treatment creates unnecessary suffering. Focus on your own growth and journey rather than external comparisons. Future anxiety. Worrying about how others might treat you in the future disturbs present moment peace. Trust in your ability to handle whatever comes with grace. Past resentment. Holding on to anger about past disrespect poisons your current peace. Practice forgiveness not for others' sake but for your own freedom, the social dimension of inner peace. When you cultivate genuine inner peace, it has profound effects on your relationships and social interactions. People are naturally drawn to those who seem centered and unshakable. Your peaceful presence often helps others access their own calm. Your peace becomes a gift you offer to every interaction, making you the kind of person others want to be around. Advanced peace practices. As your inner peace deepens, you can explore more advanced practices. Loving kindness meditation. Practice extending genuine goodwill, even toward those who have disrespected you. This doesn't mean accepting poor treatment, but it means maintaining your heart's openness. Develop the ability to remain balanced, whether experiencing praise or criticism, success or failure, respect or disrespect. All external conditions become equally manageable. Service orientation. Focus on how you can contribute to others' well-being rather than on how they treat you. This shift from receiving to giving naturally generates peace and purpose. The ripple effect of peace. When you embody genuine inner peace, you become a force for positive change in the world. Your example shows others what's possible. Your calm responses to difficult people sometimes help them recognize their own patterns. Your refusal to escalate conflicts often leads to more constructive outcomes. You become like a stone thrown into a pond, creating ripples of peace that extend far beyond your immediate interactions. This is perhaps the greatest gift you can offer to a world often torn by conflict and reactivity. You become truly free, not because you can control your circumstances, but because you cannot be controlled by them. This freedom doesn't make you indifferent to how others treat you, but it makes you invulnerable to being diminished by their treatment. You remain open to love, growth, and connection while being protected from the emotional wounds that previously devastated you. In this state of inner peace, disrespect becomes almost impossible to deliver effectively. Like arrows shot at water, attempts to wound you simply pass through without leaving damage. Not because you've become hard or uncaring, but because you've become so deeply rooted in your own worth that external storms cannot uproot you. This is the ultimate achievement of Stoic practice, not to avoid the storms of life, but to become so fundamentally stable that you can weather any storm while maintaining your compassion, your wisdom, and your commitment to living with virtue and grace. Abishul, as we reach the end of this profound journey through the landscape of Stoic wisdom, you began this exploration, perhaps feeling vulnerable to others' disrespect, wounded by their words, controlled by their opinions. Now you possess 10 powerful tools that can transform not just how you handle disrespect, but how you experience life itself. You've learned to build an impenetrable fortress of self-opinion, where your worth is determined by your own informed judgment rather than others' superficial assessments. You've discovered the art of perspective shifting, allowing you to view every challenging interaction through multiple lenses until you find one that serves your growth. You've mastered detached observation, becoming a curious scientist of human behavior rather than a wounded participant in ego-driven drama. You've seen how every insult can be transformed into an opportunity for character development, how the illusion of control over others can be replaced with genuine control over yourself. You've practiced negative visualization to build immunity to life's inevitable challenges, and you've learned to live by an inner scorecard that no external force can manipulate. Through voluntary discomfort, you've strengthened your resilience like an athlete training for competition. Through philosophical reframing, you've become an alchemist who can transform any experience into wisdom. And finally, you've begun cultivating the unshakable inner peace that makes you truly invulnerable to others' attempts to disturb your tranquility. The integration challenge. But knowledge without practice is merely entertainment. The real test begins now. As you integrate these principles into your daily life, you'll face moments when someone's disrespectful behavior triggers your old patterns of reaction. You'll encounter situations where applying Stoic wisdom feels difficult or unnatural. This is not failure. This is the normal process of growth. Remember that even Marcus Aurelius, perhaps history's greatest practitioner of Stoicism, his personal writings reveal someone who had to constantly remind himself of these truths, who worked daily to embody them more fully. Your journey is not about achieving perfection, but about consistent progress toward wisdom and resilience. The ripple effects. As you begin to embody these principles more fully, you'll notice changes that extend far beyond your ability to handle disrespect. Your relationships will deepen because you'll be less defensive and more authentically present. Your professional life will improve because you'll take appropriate risks without being paralyzed by fear of criticism. Your creative expression will flourish because you'll be less concerned with others' judgment and more focused on authentic contribution. Perhaps most importantly, you'll discover a profound sense of freedom, the liberation that comes from knowing that your peace, your purpose, and your path are not dependent on anyone else's permission or approval. This freedom will allow you to love more deeply, serve more effectively, and live more boldly than ever before. The ancient wisdom for modern times. In our hyper-connected, opinion-saturated world, these ancient Stoic principles are more relevant than ever. Social media amplifies disrespect. Workplace dynamics can be increasingly toxic, and public discourse often lacks civility. But you now possess tools that our ancestors could only dream of, combined with wisdom that has been tested across millennia. You can navigate this challenging landscape with grace, maintaining your integrity while refusing to be diminished by others' poor behavior. You can be a force for positive change, demonstrating through your example what it means to live with dignity and wisdom. Your continuing journey. This exploration of Stoic wisdom is not an ending, but a beginning. These 10 lessons are not destinations, but starting points for a lifetime of growth and development. Each day will offer new opportunities to practice these principles, to deepen your understanding and to strengthen your character. Consider creating daily practices that reinforce these lessons. Perhaps begin each morning by reminding yourself of your inner scorecard. Create a personal mission statement that captures your commitment to living by Stoic principles regardless of how others treat you. The ultimate victory. The ultimate victory in learning to handle disrespect is not becoming so intimidating that no one dares to disrespect you. It's not developing such a perfect reputation that criticism becomes impossible. The ultimate victory is becoming so fundamentally secure, so deeply peaceful, and so genuinely strong that disrespect simply cannot reach you where you live. When someone attempts to wound you with their words or actions, they'll discover that there's no wound to be made, not because you've become hard or uncaring, but because you've become genuinely free. Free from the need for their approval, free from fear of their disapproval, and free to respond from your highest wisdom rather than your wounded ego. The gift to the world. As you embody these principles more fully, you offer a precious gift to a world that desperately needs examples of emotional maturity and wisdom. In a culture that often rewards reactivity and victimhood, you demonstrate the power of taking responsibility for your own responses. In an environment that frequently amplifies conflict, you show what it means to be a force for peace and understanding. Your transformation becomes a beacon of hope for others who struggle with criticism, rejection, and disrespect. Through your example, they can begin to see that there is another way, a path that leads not to callousness or indifference, but to genuine strength and authentic freedom. The eternal perspective. Finally, remember that this work of character development extends beyond your individual life. The Stoic principles you practice today are part of a philosophical tradition that has guided humanity through its darkest hours and greatest challenges. By embodying these truths, you become part of a lineage of wisdom that stretches back through centuries and will extend forward through generations yet to come. The peace you cultivate, the wisdom you embody, and the character you develop will ripple out into the world in ways you may never fully know. Every moment you choose response over reaction. Every time you transform an insult into an opportunity, every instance where you remain centered in the face of chaos, these moments contribute to the healing and elevation of human consciousness itself. Your unshakable foundation. You now possess the knowledge and tools to build an unshakable foundation for your life. External storms may rage, difficult people may cross your path, and challenges will certainly arise. But you have within you the capacity to remain centered, peaceful, and strong through it all. This is your inheritance as a student of Stoic wisdom, not the promise of an easy life, but the guarantee that you can handle whatever life brings with grace, dignity, and strength. You are no longer at the mercy of others' moods, opinions, or treatment. You have reclaimed your power, your peace, and your purpose. The ancient Stoics believed that the highest human achievement was to live according to virtue and wisdom, regardless of external circumstances. You now have the tools to achieve this highest ideal, to become truly free, and to live a life of meaning, purpose, and unshakable inner peace. Welcome to your transformed life. The journey of mastery begins now. The mountain lake remains still and deep, perfectly reflecting the sky above. Storms may come and go, winds may create surface ripples, but the profound depth remains untouched, unshaken, and eternally peaceful. You have become that lake. You have become unshakable,